The title of my talk is Looking is Harder Than It Looks. In the summer of 1936, these two young men, the writer, James Agee, native son of Knoxville on the left and recent Harvard graduate, and on the right, Walker Evans, my photography teacher at Yale, embarked on a project sponsored by Fortune magazine to do an article on the lives of those most adversely affected by the aftermath of the Great Depression, the cotton tenant farmers, sharecroppers in the Deep South. The work they produced in Hale County, Alabama, never got published in an article in Fortune, but instead, 4 years later, it appeared in book form, Let Us Now Praise Famous Men. In the year of its publication, in 1940, it sold all of 600 copies. But since, it's become an American classic. Working independently, Agee observed and Evans photographed. The Burrowses was one of the three families they stayed with that summer. Here on the left is Floyd Burrows, tenant farmer. And on the right, his wife, Allie Mae Burrows. He was 30. She was 27. As tenant farmers, they owned nothing. Their landlord had to be paid for the use of his land. The landlord had to be paid for the house they lived in. The landlord had to be paid for the use of farm animals and implements. The landlord had to be paid for farm seed and fertilizer. After each year's cotton harvest, the ledger sheet showed that they owed more than the year before. The Burrowses were indentured to the land and to their landlord. This is the house where the Burrows family lived. The Burrows house was devoid of ornamentation, the exception being this wall and a fireplace. Where you might have a painting, they had a calendar. Where you may have family photographs, they had tear-outs from magazines. On the mantel of the fireplace is a piece of cut paper handiwork, much like what it is that a school child would do in folding a piece of paper and with scissors make a snowflake. Agee described this as Allie Mae's last effort to make their home pretty. Will you allow me a little bed talk during my TED Talk? Agee wrote about these beds. On these beds, and among their children, Floyd and Allie Mae get whatever sexual good they ever have of each other as noiselessly and with as little movement as possible. This is a detail of that bed. Agee again, talking about the sheet, the texture and coarseness, of an unwashed flour sack. As important as it was for Agee to utilize language with precision, it was equally important for Evans to utilize photography to describe with precision. The instrument that Evans chose to use is next to me, the 8x10-inch view camera, a device capable of recording with absolute fidelity. Evans very much wanted to do what it was that Agee said about the camera. That is, it's incapable of recording anything but the absolute dry truth. In the original 8x10 contact print, these black specks that you see now are clearly identifiable as flies. Agee wrote about the flies. A whole drowsing fog of them, struggling and leching on the food, hanging from the mouths and plaster cheeks of the children, vibrating to death in the buttermilk. Please look at this portrait of Allie Mae Burrows. It's a photograph so simple in form and so common, it probably doesn't merit much discussion. After all, it is of the form that is perhaps the most common of all photographs, ID photographs. Stand here in front of the background, right in front of the camera, look into the camera, click. There are millions of these photographs being made as I speak today. But I want you to look hard. To look at this photograph, not just simply as an image, but the way that you look at a page of text where you read it, parcel by parcel, word by word, detail by detail. Please look hard because, as Walker Evans asserted, looking is harder than it looks. Before continuing, I'd like to take a small digression and talk a little bit about the act of photographing people and the act of looking at those resultant photographs. This is a portrait of the American photographer Diane Arbus. Although she grew up in a household of means with an emphasis on education, in fact, her brother, Howard Nemeroff, was 2 times Poet Laureate of the United States. She became famous, or maybe more accurately, notorious for the kinds of photographs that she took. She took photographs of the kind of people that you get admonished for staring at. If there's anything worse than staring, it's a photograph. A stare lasts momentarily. A photograph lasts forever. She used her photography not to point out those who we may stare at, but rather she used her photography to ask questions and challenge why it is we stare at those we target. This is a contact print of Arbus's. It was made at a convention of twins. What emerged from her day of work that year in 1967 was one of the most haunting photographs ever made. The title of it is Identical Twins, Roselle, New Jersey, 1967. It's an image that spurred the imagination of many other artists, notably the filmmaker Stanley Kubrick, who in his 1980 masterpiece, the adaptation of the Stephen King novel, The Shining, Kubrick used these twins. By the way, their names are Kathleen and Colleen Wade. I'm going to show you a clip. These twins, created by Kubrick, did not appear in King's novel. Arbus and Kubrick worked briefly together at Esquire magazine. What do we know about twins? Was it really necessary for them to be dressed identically to let us know that they are, in fact, identical? Arbus asked them to stand next to each other, and she demanded that they each look into the lens of her camera. Arbus's strategy forces us, the members of the audience, into participating in a mutual gaze. They're looking at us, and we're looking at them. We are no longer on the sidelines. We become participants. You all have had the experience of driving down the interstate at 75 miles an hour, glancing over your shoulder at the car passing you going 85. For some reason, the driver in the other car looks at you. You meet. Your eyes meet. Contact is made. It is awkward and uncomfortable. The shell and shelter of your car suddenly loses its importance. Looking is a physical phenomenon. As I make eye contact with you in the audience, I'm not just looking at you, I've touched you. You're not looking at a photograph, you're looking at them. You're looking into their eyes. They're looking into yours. If they touch you, you are touching them. Identical twins, identical faces, identical features. After all, identical twins, a single egg fertilized that splits in two, are the most genetically similar entities. But are they? Look hard, look into their eyes and compare left and right. Remember, biologically, these features cannot be any more similar. No two pairs of eyes are more alike than the eyes of identical twins. Yet, why is it that we ascribe personality traits? On the left, shy. On the right, friendly. On the left, reserved. On the right, open. On the left, introverted. On the right, gregarious. On the left, pessimistic. On the right, optimistic. On the left, sullen. On the right, happy. Why such diametrically opposed personality traits? Can you make your eyes do what the girl on the left is doing? Can you make your eyes do what the girl on the right is doing? No, you cannot, because you're not physically capable of making such a minuscule physical change. Make your lips do what the lips of the girl on the left is doing on the right. You can't do it either, because it's such a small change that you would feel the muscles in your cheeks vibrating in your attempt to emulate those gestures. Identical or monozygotic twins aren't the only kind of twins. There are, of course, fraternal twins, and as Arbus is referencing, conjoined twins. Arbus, in asking the girls to stand next to each other, did not have them stand shoulder to shoulder, but rather one girl with her shoulder and arm in front of the other. What results is one torso, not two, 3 arms, not 4. Though they are identical. Though we tend to, when we see identical twins, say, oh, look at how cute. Arbus, in her photograph, asserts that in spite of genetics and in spite of parents' well-intended decision to dress them this way, they each assert their own individual identity. There's a knock on your door, you open it. You're confronted by her. You and she, standing face to face, eye to eye, separated by inches. Evans made more than one portrait of Allie Mae Burrows. A writer, upon completion of a draft, will engage in a process of revision. Evans, without the advantage of being able to rewrite what he had just done, insisted on testing the limits of his imagination by revising as he continued to photograph. The one on the left is made with a camera like this, with the addition of a small flash bulb. The one on the right was made in open shade. Look at the furrowing of her brow. Look at her eyes. Look at her lips. She's not looking just at you. She's looking through you. She's looking past you. She's looking at something and someplace that even she doesn't know. She's biting down on her lip ever so slowly, ever so slightly rather, that she probably doesn't even know that she's doing it. It's a picture that's emblematic of the suffering on personal, psychological, and emotional terms of the effects of the Great Depression. Allie Mae watches up at the ceiling. And she is as sick with sleep as if she had just lain the night before beneath a just supportable weight. And watching up into the dark beside her husband, the ceiling becomes visible, and watching into her eyes, the weight of the whole day. She has not lacked in utter tiredness, like a load in her whole body, since she was a young girl, and nor will she ever lack it again. Thank you very much.